Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Welcome back to the show, everybody. We are on an absolute roll this year with these amazing athletes. And before I dive into introducing this incredible woman, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has become a patron and chooses to support the show in that way. These episodes are actually way more possible because of you. And if you would like to support the production, you can also become a Patreon on patreon.com/celestialfit, which is on the episode webpage. Your support doesn't go unnoticed, and every little bit really does mean a lot to me. And a special thank you to all of you who also post about the podcast as you listen. You inspire me so much to keep going, and I know that to athletes it means a lot because they'll always reach out to me and let me know how special that is. And of course, you know, this inspires me to get these episodes out and really rocking it out for you guys. So it's just been truly an amazing journey so far. So without further ado, today we are hearing from an IFBB pro who is a fitness and nutrition expert. She's been featured on national and local TV. She graduated from BYU with a bachelor's in science and exercise science and a minor in nutrition. She's also a NASM certified personal trainer and fitness nutrition specialist, BFR certified coach, YogaFit 300-hour certified instructor, NPC judge and coach. Plus, she's the promoter of Utah's first ever ProAm bodybuilding competition, the IFBB NPC Salt City Showdown. So as a single mom working with 3 active teens, as a full-time coach and trainer, plus a professional athlete, we're going to have a lot to discuss. So I'm super happy to have you here, Robyn. Robyn Maher, how are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm doing great. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. You are very accomplished. Yes, you're so welcome. And we were actually messaging just this week about you've really put the time in. So I'm excited to talk to you about all of that. But before we get into everything, I always have to ask, do you have a ritual or one thing you do right before your heel hits the stage?
Wow, that's such a good question. You know what? I have a couple affirmations, positive affirmations that I just say right before I get on stage, things that are empowering. Just you got this, you're prepared, you've done all the work, let's go.
Awesome. I love it. And in regard to, what I was just saying is you're just an awesome person. We were just talking this week on Instagram, and I just love how you are very open and you'll share your real opinions on topics that could be considered controversial or, they're important topics to talk about. And you do so in a really respectful and genuine way. So I wanted to bring a lot of that experience. Yeah, absolutely. And your expertise really here to the podcast because following you for a while, I know, you're really just an awesome person and I like the way you show up. So like I said, we do have a lot to talk about. So I want to get first into this common problem that comes up for competitors or fitness enthusiasts where people just assume that you're naturally skinny. They don't give much thought to the, yeah, right? It's come on, you're making daily choices. You're fighting against your genetics and you're also, doing everything you can to keep the shape and improve. So, what do you normally do and what do you normally get when this comes up?
It's really tricky because I try to be, like you said, I try to be respectful no matter what our opinion is in life. I think we're all entitled to our opinion and we can share it, but I think there's a way that we can do it, that doesn't offend others or make assumptions. And listen, we've all done this before. We all, I call it the snapshot. When we meet someone, we take it for what it's worth, right? At face value, what we're seeing right in front of us. And I've done it myself where, I've met an individual before where they had lost 100 pounds and I hadn't seen them at that time, right? I didn't know them at that time when they had started their journey. And I've made the assumption before too, where, I think someone's like maybe their body type appears to be, say, like an ectomorph, super lean, the type of person that looks like they can sort of eat whatever they want. And then I later find out that that's not the case. So I've myself had to, backtrack And even though I usually didn't say it to that person, I have thought it before. And then, you know, I always try to defend the other side of the coin. By the same token, you know, say someone is maybe not super lean or doesn't appear to be incredibly fit, we also shouldn't assume that that means the person doesn't have good habits, right?
Right.
Like as a marathon runner, I've had friends that were marathon runners that didn't necessarily look like a runner, if I can say that in a way that I don't want to, you know, disrespect anyone or make any generalizations or stereotypes here. But, you know, we typically think runners are like kind of long and lengthy and really skinny too, right? If someone's running 10 miles a day and they're training for a marathon, they might be doing a 18 or 20-mile run on the weekend. And there are individuals who do that. And like there's a Clydesdale division, for example, you know, at some races. And so we can't make those assumptions either way. So when people make that assumption about me, I literally have had people say that to me, like, you don't know what it's like. You're just naturally skinny. I've had people tell me you can eat whatever you want. And I do, honestly. Like, you've seen my opinion. I try to control, you know, my frustration when I respond to that. But it's hard because I am making daily choices that keep me in the shape that I'm in. And it's really not easy for me. It's not at all. Like, I really feel like I gain weight super quickly. And I don't get to go really crazy with my diet. I don't have a ton of cheats, or if I do, they're very kind of small and measured, or they're just not super frequent. So, and that's just kind of my genetics and my body type that I've been given. And so rather than complain about it, I've chosen to, you know, I want to be fit. I want to be in shape. I want to take care of my body. So that's what I try to put out there, you know. So I have had to like put a couple people in their place. Like I said, I try to do so in a respectful way, but I've just had to say to people sometimes, like, listen, you really don't know what I do on a daily basis to be in the shape that I'm currently in. You know, so I just try to encourage people to remember that. We don't know that about anyone that we come across, anyone that we meet. So we should never make assumptions, right, about what brought someone to the current place that we're seeing, just this little snapshot, this moment in time, you know, before us, whenever we do end up meeting that person. Does that make sense? Wherever our journeys pass, or our paths cross. You know, so just try to remind people to be respectful of that, you know, that we don't know. And so it's not fair to say to someone like, oh, why are you here? Why are you at the gym? It's like that funny Jim Gaffigan thing. Have you heard that one? Like the super fit people at the gym. He's like, your work is done. Get out of here.
Oh, yeah.
Go home. It's so funny. I love it. But, you know, I think it then also leads into the question or the subject of, you know, the reasons that why some of us go to the gym. Like, it's not just to lose weight. Some of us truly have a love for our bodies, and we want to just be fit and strong. And so I think sometimes people discount that, you know, we shouldn't just work out or eat well only if we have to lose weight. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, we shouldn't just be forced to take care of our bodies.
Yeah, it's not just about like the way we look or how much, you know, we weigh or anything, I guess, physical. It can also go way deeper than that. And it does go way deeper than that. That's actually what inspired my whole journey, and why now my mission is, you know, to help people build more than just a body, because it really is about more than that. Like, if you were to strip back like surface level, none of that really matters. It's almost it becomes a byproduct. Like, when you love yourself so much, you're naturally inspired to do those things that serve your body and then taking a shape that you feel really good about. And I know that sometimes in a family setting, like, this topic can be kind of awkward because people are quick to blame family history. Like, everyone's sitting around the table looking around like, yeah, well, it's in the family, you know. It's like, but by the same time, like, habits can change everything. And like you said, we don't know everyone's history or the story, and we're just seeing this snapshot. So what kind of habits do you have that you feel have actually allowed you to maintain and build this elite physique that, you know, kind of like the habits that come naturally to you, but maybe not that others are aware of?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, because I truly believe that we can change our DNA. I absolutely believe that we are all dealt a different hand. You know, when we're born, say someone is naturally skinny, but, you know, they may have very addictive behaviors, right? And they really battle addiction to, say, you know, maybe drugs or caffeine or nicotine or whatever it is. So I think we're all dealt a different hand. And so, like you said, we can sit back and we can say, woe is me, this is just my genetics, or I can't do anything about this. But I'm just way more about the empowerment and like taking responsibility for, you know, whatever hand we are dealt, you know. And so for me, in dealing with that, you know, I learned, I've got little bit of a story, you know, back in college, kind of when I sort of discovered like this is the way it is, because I was, you know, eating pancakes at midnight with my roommates and, you know, going out to get fries, or, you know, cheese covered fries, whatever. And long story short, I realized like, oh, this isn't just going to like burn off me like it does with some of my friends. We've all got that friend, right, that could eat whatever. And for me, it was very much not the case. And so I sort of gained that cliche, like freshman 15. And then here I found myself a sophomore. I was about 20 years old. And I just didn't feel good at all. And that was the place, I mean, yes, it's somewhat aesthetics and you want to fit in your clothes and you want to feel good about yourself, right? And then I was also in this cesspool of, you know, like this dating life, this, you know, college type situation, you know, where you're with obviously young people your age and everything, and you're comparing and you want to feel good. But really deep down, it came from that I didn't feel good. Like I didn't feel good energy. And so I just said, okay, I got to switch something. So I actually went vegetarian. I actually totally said, you know, and I was eating like very like beef and heavy meats. Like I wasn't eating the type of proteins I eat now. So that was part of it. I think I was coming closer to where I wanted to be. But so I actually did that for like 7 to 8 years. Like my first pregnancy, I was still like totally vegetarian. I was actually vegan at one point. Yeah. So as I was learning about nutrition and all that, you know, that whole experience, the way I felt started my journey. I also had some members of my family who I kind of watched go through a similar thing and like never come back from it. So I saw the way that kind of lack of health or maintaining those good health habits that I eventually did develop had, you know, affected those people's, you know, lives. And we all know individuals like that, right? Where sometimes if you don't take care of your health, it can really affect who you are and where you go in your career and a lot of things about your life, right? Your choices. So I literally got like my first gym membership. I was like 19 years old and went to this gym down the street, and I had no idea what I was doing at all, but I just showed up. Just show up. Like that'd be the main piece of advice I just give people at first. Like even if you don't know what you're doing, you feel intimidated. I felt so out of place. I remember feeling like everyone was looking at me like she's an idiot. She doesn't know what she's doing, right? And really, once you go to the gym for a while, you realize everyone's like they're in their own world. They're really not looking at you. They're not looking at your outfit. They're not looking at. But you know, I just remember that very vividly, that insecurity, you know, and that feeling of being like, you know, really standing and being out of place, standing out. But I just kept showing up. Like I said, I did a lot of like classes because I just didn't really know what to do. So I did some, you know, group classes and slowly just started looking at the machines, reading a little side, you know, the machine that said like leg press, like sit on the machine, put your feet on the platform. And you know, slowly just got more and more used to things. And every now and then I would have someone come to me and say like, oh, hey, you're totally doing that wrong.
Oh, really?
You know, oh yeah. Like I remember, you know, like the gym guy, you know, there was like a gym dad, like like the mayor of the gym was there all the time, you know. Like I remember this guy, this is back in the 90s, but I remember this guy in like his striped biker shorts, like really tight biker shorts. And like his weight belt, you know, that big leather weight belt, his like stringer tank, his mullet.
Naturally.
Literally, like I still see this guy, by the way, at the gym, and this was like 20 plus years ago. I still see him, which goes a lot to say about him, because again, it's just about showing up and being consistent. Like he's still around. This guy's got to be in his 60s now. But yeah, I remember him saying to me, I was doing like a seated cable row or something, and I wasn't offended at all, because I was just kind of like, oh, thanks. Yeah, you clearly know what you're doing, so tell me. And you know, I was just like leaning, you know, way forward. I was just not doing the movement right. Yeah. And so, you know, if you're open to people, you know, giving you advice too, and just kind of have an ego about it and just keep showing up. So that's what I did. And then eventually I got, you know, more and more comfortable. And then I gradually ended up teaching classes, like because I was an exercise science major, I could actually do that for credit. So it was like a TA position, but I ended up teaching some group exercise classes in the physical education department when I was, you know, going through so, I mean, I went from knowing nothing and feeling super out of place to where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually leading this class, you know, and trying to help other people. And that just led to the desire to, you know, teach others and educate myself further and learn everything there was to know about exercise and nutrition. So yeah, so I just like started maintaining that habit of going to the gym, you know, daily, just making it part of my day. And that's where it is now, where I literally, if I haven't moved my body, I just posted about this the other day, like taking a rest day is really hard for me. And it's not a badge of honor. I'm not like, oh, I'm so amazing. I'm so good. I don't even want to take a rest day. It's not about that at all. It's just like a morning cup of coffee or something, you know, where you just kind of feel like you haven't started your day until you've done some people meditate, some people read their Bible and scripture, and that's how they start their day. So for me, it's almost like a meditation. It just sets my day, and I feel like it just starts my day off right. So that's a big one, and that's something I've tried to teach my kids. They're teenagers, so they pick and choose the days that they want to be a part of that. But so that, and then just, being aware of what I'm eating. I don't believe in being on a diet forever. I do kind of track my macros if I'm off season. It's much more loose than when I'm on season, but, just kind of being aware, and like, I just call them like baby steps. Like when we do those little steps every single day and then we're consistent over time, it's going to be easier to maintain your weight. We're going to feel good about ourselves. We're going to feel confident, in our health. And I feel like I'm preventing. A big thing for me too, that I try kind of preach a little bit, if you will, is like the prevention of disease and illness. I'm just like, what, it's great to fit into a certain size, and I want you to be confident. I want you to feel good in your body. I feel pretty strongly about that, especially with women. I work with a lot of women. But at some point I'm like, let's take care of our health, and like, gosh, let's like prevent. There's so many of these diseases now that they're associating with, nutrition, like Alzheimer's and, MS, and all of these things that are triggered when you have a super clean, like I have a client right now with MS, and she very much associates a lot of things with her diet, that she won't have flare-ups, and she's stronger, when she's eating certain things and avoiding certain things. So even right down to, autistic. I have an autistic brother, and a lot of connections have been made between diet and, behavior with autistic individuals. So, not only that, but those of us who are blessed with, a very healthy body from birth, like I kind of see it as if we've been given this perfectly functional, like driving a Ferrari off the lot, it's this amazing piece of machinery, and it runs fast and it does amazing things. But if we don't treat it right, the whole analogy with the car.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Let's take care of it so that it doesn't lose function and it doesn't, drive sluggish and dry. Does that make sense? So
yeah, absolutely. Like, treat your body like this machine, because you've been given it. You started out with like an A+, and now you just gotta continue to prove that you deserve that A+. And how do you do that? You give yourself. You study, right? You do the things you need to do that help you to maintain that. And for you, a lot of that has become habitual, and it's now a non-negotiable. And something you mentioned that I really appreciated was that we have to focus on the health as well. I think it's easy to go online, especially today, like go on social media and just see like bodies, instead of like health and function and peace of mind, and what's really the point of why this person's eating this or supplementing with that, or doing this specific movement, like this warm up. And I think it's easier to look past it than to actually apply it and go, okay, I should be considering these things into my daily nutrition. So what are some things you recommend to the women you work with to help them maintain their health while also transforming their bodies?
Oh, wow. What are the things I recommend? There's so much.
What are things that like anyone could, like people you like see around, you're like, I wish they were doing this.
Well, honestly, I find it surprising that even some very well-educated people or individuals, even with like, the means, like more affluent, socioeconomic, you have the ability to provide for yourself, like the people who don't even give themselves the most basic, just basic nutrition, like fruits and vegetables, and like back to the basics, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I usually start with like when I give people plans that are based on whole foods. I like real food, real proteins, obviously depending on our lifestyle. Sometimes we need bars or shakes or things like that. But like I usually start with just a basic list of like multivitamins and supplements. Like I do believe that we all need, in a perfect world, we'd be getting everything that we need from food, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really surprised when I hear like pretty well educated leaders in this field say like, you don't need any supplements. You don't need anything. You can get everything from your food. And I'm sorry, but first of all, like the quality of our food is not that good these days.
Good point.
Maybe if we were in that world where we could grow all our own food, right? And you were in like an area where you were eating things that were indigenous to that area and all that. But I just think like our food isn't that perfect anymore. And secondly, we're not necessarily absorbing everything that we're eating. So I don't know. I just really believe in eating as much whole food as possible. And then I do believe in like supplements. I'll start with people like, basic multivitamins. I like whole food based, type vitamins and minerals. But yeah, just like the general stuff that a lot of us aren't getting, like your fish oils and your omegas. And most people I work with need enzymes, like they're not digesting well. And I think that also helps us to absorb our food better. A lot of the gut stuff, you know what I mean? That we don't. Probiotics, prebiotics. So those are usually the things that I start with a lot of people. And yeah, it kind of surprises me. Like even sometimes I'm working with someone for like a month or so, and then they'll start saying to me like, well, I'm kind of having this issue or bloating and my digestion isn't good or, X, Y, and Z. And then I'll go back to, okay, water. How much water are you getting? Are you taking your enzymes? Are you eating the vegetables and fruits and the whole foods that I have on your plan? And 9 times out of 10, it's like one of those things. People are skipping either, their those basic nutrients, or they're just like not eating the fruits and veggies on their plan. They're just eating just carbs and, not eating like fruits and vegetables, and they're just eating like carbs and protein, and they're not getting their micronutrients,
Right.
So yeah, so that's like something that I often will kind of start with, with a lot of the people I work with.
That's
I don't know if that completely answered your question.
Oh, no, it did.
It seems kind of broad. So
it's hard to answer a question like that when things are so personal. But I think you did a great job, like the digestive enzymes, the multivitamins, whole foods, back to the basics. And when something goes awry, ask yourself if you're doing everything that you're meant to be doing, like drinking water.
Things,
the basics. So,
yeah. And it really seems like it's one of those things with almost everyone, or like, I'll get back to the water. And they're like, well, I have this liter hydro flask, but I kind of don't finish it. It sits on my desk all day at work. And so they just kind of need to crank up, their water intake and get hydrated. So some of those really simple things actually make a big difference, and we don't think that they do. So, and then sleep. I would probably throw sleep on there next. So.
Sleep. Yes. I noticed like basically the restoration of my hormonal health has massively improved. And I think one of the top reasons it's back to where it needs to be is actually because of the supplements that I've been taking that I know are good for this. And then also sleep and de-stressing any possible way I can has made a big difference. Yeah. And I think those are really great insights and tools for people to use, and obviously even reach out to you and possibly consider working with you if they need more support with that. I do want to talk to you about just kind of like your journey into competing. Your first show was back in 2014. Obviously, since then you've come a long way. It
was actually 2012.
2012? My
first NPC, my first bikini competition was 2014, but I actually did 2 figure before that.
Okay, I had looked at that
2012
post and I was like, okay, 2014. So 2012.
I know, I had someone ask me that, I remember. Yeah, so I was prepping. I wasn't made for figure. Basically, I mean, I love like figure. I love muscle. I love that physique. It's so strong. I love that like awesome taper figure competitors have. So I did, my first show. And again, back in 2012, also remember those divisions were very different at that time too. So what I brought to the stage as, NPC figure in 2012, I could totally walk on, and compete in bikini now. But so I did that, and, I kind of said, okay, I need a lot more muscle. I totally did. I didn't know how to pose at all either. So, I mean, it's comical when I look now, I'm like, was that my front pose? I'm actually pulling any lats out. Hello. And that's okay. It's my first competition. But so I try to, kind of have an off season and put on some muscle and all of that. And really just wasn't working the way I wanted to. A lot of it's just my structure. It's important to look at your body and your physique. Like, we can love the figure division. Like, I really like that. I like that look. That doesn't mean necessarily that your body's meant to compete in that division. And sometimes we have to take that honest look at ourselves and go, okay, I'm not quite made for this. And there's some that can cross over into both. And you're really lucky if you're one of those people who can just pose differently and totally nail those, figure poses, and you can kind of stand a little bit more relaxed, right? Twist a different way, and you look awesome as bikini. And there are those people. But for me, so I kind of put it off a little bit. And in the beginning of 2014, and I did kind of train for it. I had to lose some size in my legs and my quads. They were too big. And even my first season as an NPC bikini athlete, like the first couple national shows I did, my legs were still pretty big. Like they said, you just need to bring this down, you know, and bring your waist down. My waist was a little bit thick too for bikini. So I made some of those changes, but yeah, I was really happy. So once I did get on stage as a bikini competitor, my first show was the Legends, actually the Muscle Contest Legends, in 2014. I think it was the first year they did that show. And so that was kind of fun for me recently to compete as a pro in that show, because
That's awesome.
for me, it's sort of a full circle, you know, coming back. Yeah. And then I did my second one was here in Utah in Salt Lake, March of that year of 2014. And I placed first in all my classes. I did like the Masters, the Open, the Novice.
Wow.
And that was really exciting. Yeah. Just to feel like,
That's
okay,
amazing.
I kind of felt like I found my place. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what do you think has been like some of the most influential, I guess, aspects or decisions you've made along the way to be able to continue to build a winning physique?
Oh my gosh. I think just being teachable, and like I'm probably my own worst critic. I try to, you know, put positive things out there online to help inspire and motivate other people. But, you know, like we all can be really hard on ourselves. And really, I think it's one of the number one things in the sport, to be able to have the confidence to go out there on stage, to know you're going to be judged, you know, for your physique. I mean, it's aesthetic, right? They're looking at muscle development and conditioning. And then to be able to also take, you know, that criticism and be like humble enough to say like, okay, I got to go back and work on this. I got to, you know, it's a very tricky balance between the two, you know, very yin and yang, like, okay, I got to have confidence and feel good about myself, right? Feel proud of what I've created and be brave enough. I mean, it's really brave. Anyone who can be, I have so much respect for you on any level, because we're opening ourselves up to that comparison, you know, and that critique, and that's hard to do. But then to also, you know, just to be able to take the flip side and just to know like, okay, this is a constant journey. Like I'm going to be proud of myself no matter what I place. Like we have to go in believing we can win, you know, and go in knowing that we brought our best and give it everything. But then to also be able to walk away no matter what that placing is and say, you know, okay, I can make improvements, but like I'm still proud of myself. I'm still okay with what. And I've also had a couple of shows here and there where I didn't bring my best, you know, and it wasn't. And that feels awful. There's like nothing worse than that. But again, to be able to be humble enough to say, I didn't put everything I could have, right? Or say we weren't perfect on our diet, or there were days where like I should have gotten this many minutes cardio, and I was sort of like, oh, I'm tired, I'm going to do this instead, or, you know, where we just, so, and that's okay. Like we're human, we're going to have those days sometimes, but it feels really good when you know you've absolutely given everything. You know, and put everything out there on the table. I don't know. So I have found it very, very empowering. Like for me, and I always compare competing and bodybuilding. To me, it's a different journey for everyone. So the other day I was with a friend who's just getting ready for her first competition. She's heard so many different opinions, as you can imagine. You know, when you're getting ready for your first competition, everyone comes out of the woodwork with an opinion, right? Like, you should do this, you shouldn't do this, this is wrong, this is right, this is so vain, you'll have everything under the sun. But I said, listen, it's like taking a trip to Mexico and say, you know, you go through one travel agency and you do these adventures, and the week that you're there has this type of weather, and maybe somebody else goes on a different week, like they didn't sign up with the best, you know, whatever travel agency, or the resort they stayed at didn't come through with, they have a totally different experience, right? They're like, Mexico sucks, I never want to go to Mexico again, like what a waste of money that was, and it rained, and I just like feel like, you know, that's kind of like competing. I mean, everyone has a different experience. Yeah. And yeah, maybe the destination is Mexico, but like what we get out of it's gonna be different for everyone, you know? Someone could go to Mexico and it's pouring rain all week, but they're still like, hey, I took the week off of work. We hung out in the spa. I relaxed, right? Like I was with my family, and they might still have a great experience. So I feel like that's kind of like competing. Like, you know, we're all gonna have a different experience, but I just try and take the best, you know, I can out of every prep is different, you know, and I feel like I grow and develop in every single one, and to me it's like helped me in every aspect of my life. Like it's been empowering and strengthening, like for me as a single woman too, like just as a single mom, like I live in an area that's very family oriented, very religious based, and at the time that like I got divorced, I didn't have a lot of friends that were, And it was like, there's this stigma, there's sort of like this, I almost feel like the scarlet letter, on my chest or something. But, I was in a situation that, to be honest, like I chose to get out of it. Like I filed for divorce. I had been married 11 years. Marriage is hard for anyone, right? But there was some really, really tough stuff that I went through. And let me just say, I came out with like zero confidence in myself, zero self-worth. Like literally feel like, we've all been there before in different situations, emotionally just drained and just wrung dry, you know what I mean? Like no juice left kind of thing. And so I was prepping for my first show at the time that all that went down. So again, for me, taking what we can out of each situation, like it was therapeutic for me. Some people go to alcohol, right? Some people go to drugs, some people go to some really more negative things to get through hard times. But like for me, it was just sort of having that focus and like a program to follow and like going to the gym, do my workout. It strengthened me, you know what I mean? Like obviously physically and, mentally, like figuratively, it was, So then for me, like that culmination of getting on stage the first time, and there was some family resistance. I had some friends who criticized me for it, who think it's totally inappropriate, to get on stage in this tiny little posing suit, and you try and explain it to them, you try and put it into context, and some are just going to choose not to see it that way. That's okay. But, so it was just very much, as old as I was 37 when I first started competing. It was very much like sort of coming into my own, skin and like just owning it and just saying, you know what, this is something I've decided to do and it's okay if you don't like it or you don't approve of it. And so it was just like empowering on so many levels for me to just get out there on stage. It was almost like that day you get out there, it's funny, people only focus on that teeny little posing suit, right? And all the stuff we do on that day. And it's like so much not about that day. Like the whole thing happens, right, when you're in the gym and when you're going through the motions and when you're taking the steps to bring yourself, to this higher place, a stronger. And, I always joke that I want to write a book, like Lance Armstrong, like it's not about the bike. I want to write a book. Like it's not about the bikini, just because there's so much that you can take from, from the whole experience. So, so it really just helped me to just like believe in myself more and to just kind of be unapologetically who I am and just own it. So it just took off for me from there. So when other people ask me about it and, why do you do it? Because I'll get people to say, I just don't get it.
Right.
Which honestly really irks me. It really annoys me because I'm just sort of like,
of course you don't get it.
You don't have to get it.
Yes.
Like when I was compared to like, I post about this every now and then, all the hobbies other people do that I don't get, that I don't want to waste my time on, or I don't want to waste my money on. Like it makes no sense to me. Like triathlons, like I don't want to get in cold water and swim, like. Only but hey, people love that, right?
Yes, they do. They love it.
So yeah, we all take something different out of it, but I just think, for me, it's been such a positive experience. And then that's why I do what I do. I coach some. I don't really honestly focus on just NPC coaching as much as lifestyle. Like I haven't ever established a team or really, what's the word? Focus on that. I do it every now and then. It's more for like individuals that I feel like are really committed, that really want to do it for the right reasons. And I feel like they're really going to follow through with the program. I'll every now and then work with individuals like that. I really enjoy like teaching the posing more. Just because once I became an NPC judge, I realized, and myself in the sport, as I realized what a difference posing and your presentation on stage makes in your placement. I had no clue, no idea my first few shows. So it's something I really like, and I kind of like to build, people up on the mental and emotional side of that too, because that comes across in posing. So totally. I guess I just really love connecting, with other women in that way, and then I end up hearing people's stories as I meet with them and work on posing. So
that's something I wanted to actually. Yeah, that's something I wanted to dive into with you. Just that you are an NPC judge, and so you can see a very different perspective than I think only a competitor would feel. So you actually get to be on the other side of the table. So I actually wanted to ask you about being a judge for the NPC and how that's actually changed the way that you compete, and as well as what you can share for competitors, because you're saying, you know, posing is really important and you've noticed that even more since becoming a judge. So I'd love to just be able to learn a lot more from your perspective, because you're on the other side of the table, right? You're on like the below the stage, like looking up, you're actually able to judge the girls and see what they're looking for. So can you fill us in a bit on how that's changed you as a competitor? And then we'll dive into how this could help people who are listening as well.
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, first of all, as a competitor, it's made me realize like what a hard job those judges have. You know, I think as competitors, and I totally was guilty of this, I 100% confess, like the things that we'll say about the judges, or this is so stupid, or the judge is this or that, or they're only giving that person the placing because of, you know, their team and politics, or, you know, the things that you think affect those judges that like really don't, or the things that they don't even know. Like, for example, I don't know if this has changed, but like here where I judge, like we don't even have the person's name. And I've literally had people walk out that I see at the gym every single day and I don't even recognize them, or I don't even know until after, like at the night show, like when they announce their name, like so-and-so got third place. And I'm like, oh, that's like this person from, so sometimes you don't even realize it's them, you know, or recognize, because people look so different, you know, obviously at the gym versus on stage, or you're also just in that role as a judge. Like you're just focused on what you're doing. I mean, you're really looking at physiques and muscle groups and conditioning and the development of, you know, and it goes quite fast. So yeah, my number one thing is I just have like a lot more respect for the judges and the weight and the responsibility of that position, because I think for me as an athlete myself and a currently competing athlete, you know, there's a lot of people who judge that did compete 10 years ago or 12 years ago. I don't know, maybe it's just more poignant or more close to home for me, but I mean, I want to take that seriously. You know, every single athlete that's up there that put that time and effort into it, like I respect you for that. And I don't ever like to, like, you know, just rush through my numbers. Like we all know, like you know, only gets placed up to a certain position, you know, like typically up to 16th, right? And then everyone will tie for 16th in a group. But I mean, I still kind of want to look at those physiques and like, okay, that person I can see as 16th or 17th or anyway. So just, you know, really like having that respect for the athletes and, you know, giving them the time and attention that they deserve, you know, when doing those placings. So that just was like the biggest thing to me, was like, wow, these judges have to do this in a pretty quick amount of time, because by the time that class is done, and that's the head judge, you know, the head judge doesn't score. A lot of people don't know that. I had no idea about that for I don't even know how many years. The head judge does not even score you. They basically just direct traffic. The head judge can kind of show who their favorites are, but all the head judges that I work with have us like write down notes and pass in our top fives. And then they do the call outs. So then they'll do the top call out. So they're looking at all the different input from the whole judging panel. And then again, all head judges are going to do this differently, but the ones I work with typically will then, you know, look at the top numbers, you know, and that first call out could be 6 or 7 people too, right? But, you know, they take all that input and then they do the call out, and then they move people around in comparison, put someone in the middle or whatever, but they're not actually scoring. So, you know, all the judges on the panel are super important. We angle, or you should know this, a lot of amateurs and newbies kind of don't know this, but you should angle all your poses towards the middle and towards the head judge, no matter where you're standing on stage. And that's a great skill. You know, the best posers then know how to angle and hit those poses from anywhere on stage, so that the head judge and the majority of the judging panel only ever see their best angles. And then the other thing as being a judge that I learned once I was on the other side of the table is what I mentioned on my IG stories the other day. I said, you know, listen, people, we have to remember that like the judges can't unsee what they saw. So, you know, your husband or spouse or your mom might take pictures and it's like, wow, you nailed every single pose. Or even those stage photographers that are really good, and a lot of them take a lot of shots. But, you know, saying a lot of them, it looks like you're hitting your poses, but they're not taking pictures when you're halfway turned, right? Usually they get the lineup when they're all facing the back and they're in their back pose, or they're, you know, all facing front and they're in their front pose. It's everything in between that separates, you know, first place from fifth place or third place from not placing. Like during those turns, the judges are still watching, you know, every single second we're on stage, we are being judged. And it's hard to digest that, but, you know, that just shows why, you know, again, that posing is so important. That's why I love doing the posing. with athletes is just because, you know, your posture, right down to like really vacuuming your abs and holding your abs in tight. I feel like I don't breathe the whole time I'm on stage. You know, really it all matters. So even when you're on the diagonal, even after you've done your individual presentation, you know, the judges are looking up and they're ranking you guys, they're scoring you. So number 13 might be up there in the middle going through her poses, but they might be looking over at you, you know, or number 1 through 10 already came up on stage as they're placing people. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
it's just kind of like, you know, every moment that you're on stage really matters. So just bringing your best and only showing your best angles is so important. So I always teach like less is more. Like don't add extra poses, don't add extra little, especially as an NPC athlete, like the simpler the better. Like you just want to keep it super simple and just nail every one of those angles and only include what flatters you the most. Like you could say, I really like this pose because so-and-so does it, or my favorite bikini pro does it. I'm sorry, but that does not mean you should do it. You know, like there's some things that, you know, even teammates of mine or some of my favorite people do that I can't do because I don't have the same physique as that person, right? Or the same strength. I have different weaknesses. And so, you know, the person who wins on stage is the one who shows the least amount of weaknesses. It doesn't mean that that person's perfect, but it just means they're really good at only doing their best poses. They're good at that stage presentation, you know, like being confident, and you do want to kind of have that wow factor and connect with the judges. But, you know, sometimes it means cutting out the lesser, you know, poses or those extra little things that would be fun to include, but it's not necessarily smart.
So what are some of those, like, do you ever see like competitors doing something where you're like, oh, I wish that they would just not do that?
I'll give you a really good example of something that falls right in this category, in my opinion, that a lot of people shouldn't do and they do. And what it is it's that little turn that Angelica Teixeira does when she's turning to the back. She does this thing where she kind of like flips her hair. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
I do know
she's
exactly.
Sort of halfway turned. And it's a very signature, it's something that like maybe other people did it, but I just always see Angelica do it in her posing. And honestly, I don't think a lot of people can get away with it. And I don't think a lot of people should do it right there. You're in like a super vulnerable spot as a bikini competitor. Like that turn, that transition when we turn to the back and then go into that back pose is so vitally important. It's where a lot of girls, you know, they'll come at sometimes straighten up and then you'll see them kind of lean over when they get to the back. In my opinion, there shouldn't be any separation right there. Like there shouldn't be, when you turn to the back, you should be like in your pose already. And that means, you know, your chest is up, you're kind of pushing into your glutes, you know, and you have that curve in your lower back. And we want everything to look really tight in that position, right? Like that's where a lot of us women, we have a hard time with like hamstrings and, you know, around the glute area. Okay. So we want it to appear like we're super, super tight, and we can do that. I mean, listen, it's all smoke and mirrors. We can do that. You know, if you turn the right way, and you want to be pretty careful about the way you move through those transitions. So to me, like, especially for most amateurs, like you don't really want to be kind of leaning and halfway turn to the back and then like move your body in that way where Angelica kind of like, it's kind of like shaking her head. You know what I mean? You're kind of like flipping, she flips her hair. And it's man, you got to be good to pull that off in pretty condition, you know. So that's just something where I would say to an athlete, or like I had a amateur athlete I was working with a few years ago that loved Angelica. And listen, I adore Angelica. She's a wonderful person. She was the first champion of my IFBB Salt City Showdown in Salt Lake City. So she has like a special place in my heart. And she's so gracious and so professional. So I just absolutely love her as a great, you know, example in our industry. But yeah, I've had to say to like this individual, like, I love that you adore Angelica and I love her too. And I get it that you want to do that, but we just need to take that out. Like that point is just like a really, you know, tricky point, and you want to just keep it simple. You just want to like turn to the back and step into that pose kind of carefully, you know, keep everything nice and tight, and just, you know, we just kind of have to take that out. So it's sort of just like carving off, you know, the extra little excess sometimes and just going back to the basics. And again, as NPC athletes, they have, you know, 10 to 12 seconds up there on stage. Usually, you know, if they get to do their individual presentation, more and more shows are taking that out. You know, some of them can keep it in the night show if it's not a big show in finals. But for morning prejudging, a lot of judges are just getting to the point where, you know, they're doing it more like nationals, where they bring out, you know, the class in groups of like 5 or 6. You know, they usually just do like one turn, like a little comparison, send them off, sometimes they'll let you come back on and do your individual presentation, but sometimes they just bring you out and go right into actual comparisons, you know? So you don't always get to do it. So again, that brings up another key point is like focus more on those comparisons. Practice walking to the back, you know, practice moving from one end of the line to the other, because that's where those decisions are really made. I think a lot of girls really, really focus on their individual posing and presentation, you know, that routine or whatever you want to call it. And it's not, you know, it's not weighed as much as those comparisons. Like that's where the show is won, you know? So that's another thing that I talk to athletes about. But yeah, I think the key thing when you go back to judging, and that's what I was talking about in my stories, because there was a certain athlete recently at a pro show who really put up a big fit, wasn't happy about her placing, was very, very verbal about it. And that was just like so disrespectful to the judges. I mean, you know, most of the judging panels, I mean, they've been around for a long time. Where I live here in Salt Lake, Brady Lane Craig, who put on the Emerald Cup, they're our chairman from Seattle. And we have to test, like we have to score like 90% or higher. So there have been people who've test judged and haven't made the cut. And those of us who do judge, we're ranked and scored like every single time we judge, we're given a score. Like they're constantly monitoring us and like checking to see that we're accurate. So yeah, so before you know, we make these statements about the judges or things are political or it's because I wasn't on this team, I think it's a good thing to keep that in mind, you know, that those judges have gone through a process and all that, and they're there for a reason. But
yeah, I wanted to know a little bit about like becoming a judge. Like what is that process like? Like what are they training you? You said they're testing you. Like what is that?
I mean, yeah, so they literally give you like a percentage, like they score you against like what the actual results were of the show and placings and how close you were, like the margin of error. Yeah, like the deviation of my accuracy based on what the results actually were. So I like to sit like at finals, you know, we're not judging anymore. We'll have the score sheets printed out with all the placings on it. So as a judge, you kind of get to like sit there more other than like the overalls that you're judging in real time. So I like to write in like what the actual was and so I have my sheet that shows like what my scores were from the morning pre-judging, and then I'll write in what the actual outcome was. And those are also made public. They're published on the website. So you can go back after any show. I don't think everybody knows this either. You can look at what every single judge scored you. And it says the name of the judge. Like, it's very transparent. So if I sucked as a judge, like, everyone would know it. And then I had like an error happen. This was last summer. It was an overall, and it was totally unanimous. This guy, like, won the overall. I don't know exactly what I don't embarrass anybody, but my score was off, and I was the only one. And I was like, no, I know I gave that. And somehow something had gotten transposed, and maybe it was my own error as I wrote it down. That absolutely could be the case. But I was mortified. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's on record now. Like, that's public. And it was really a big deal to me. Like, I even reached out to the head judge, Steve DeVore, who is the head judge of that show. And I'm like, can I change this? Like, I have my sheet. Like, I keep them for like a year, because athletes sometimes will contact you and say, can you give me feedback? You know, I was number 43 in the green suit or whatever. So I try and keep my notes, you know, from the prejudging for those people if they contact me. But I'm like, I promise I like have my notes. And he was like, don't worry about it. The guy won the overall. It doesn't matter. And I'm like, nobody matters to me. So I think it's good for people to know, like, those are public. Those scores are public, and you can see what everybody scored you. And so I think, you know, the sport, they're doing as much as possible to keep it super fair and super transparent and have people well trained. Like, yeah, if you're in my area and you wanted to become a judge, I've encouraged a couple of my friends recently to do it, because we need lots of judges. We need diversity. We need people who are well trained. So like, for example, my friend Stacey Gladwell, who's a figure pro, she's from north of me, up like Ogden, Utah. But so she's recently test judged. I think you have to do at least 2 or 3. And you contact Michelle Mayberry, who's over our region. She's over the judges in our region, and you have to request it, you know, and then she'll set up a couple of shows where you can do that, and they have you test judges. Like, your scores don't count, but they have you there running through it just like you would, and then they score you, and you have to pass, like I said. So you have to do a number of shows.
How do they train you?
To kind of prove it. That's a good question. I mean, there isn't necessarily like a formal training process.
Okay.
So like for me, like I said, I try to, you know, watch how the placings go. I also attend and compete a lot of other shows, which I feel like is helpful. Like, I'm at almost every national show. Like I go down to the USA's in Las Vegas, and, you know, so I try to like keep myself current by watching, because the trends change. You know, as a judge, it's kind of like a 7-year-old saying, I've been a doctor for like 30 years. Like, it's not necessarily a good thing. You know what I mean? Like when someone, you know what I'm saying? Because like,
Yes.
like even in like, say, the medical field, like there's new techniques that come out, right? There's constant studies being published. And so you really have to stay on top of it. And the same thing with this sport. Like, it's kind of, the onus is on you to keep yourself, you know, updated, to keep yourself educated. But if you don't, then your scores are going to show it. You know what I mean? And at that point, they could say to you, like, okay, listen, your scores are lagging here a little bit. And then you could work on that or do what you need to do to improve. So my goal is to become a national judge, and then hopefully like an IFBB judge one day. That's what I would love to do. But, you know, there's a process with that. So I have to keep working on it, improve myself to do that. But yeah, so that's pretty exciting. And then, you know, like my show, the Salt City Showdown that we have in April of every year, you know, we get to bring in like Sandy Williamson's our head judge this year. I don't get to pick the judges. The IFBB and the NPC choose those judging panels, but it's been, like somebody said to me, like, I don't know if you picked your judges yet. And I'm like, oh, honey, no, I don't get to pick my judges. You know, I have the sanction for the show. I organize the show, but I mean, it's President Jim Mannion himself chose the judges for my show. They literally just send me an email. Like, there's a couple judges on the panel this year that I've never even met. There's someone from Ohio. There's someone from Texas.
Wow.
On the IFBB panel. Yeah. So, I mean, it's very fair as far as that goes. Like, as a promoter, I don't get to just say, okay, I'm going to bring in my bestie or this person, you know.
Yeah.
I did request, you know, Sandy Williamson, because I'm trying to make, you know, my show, the Salt City Showdown, like a very high caliber. I want to be as close to like a national level show as possible, so that it really means something, you know, when people come and compete at that show, or say they, you know, win the title. Sherry Sparrow won the Bikini Pro division last year, and I want to say Joe Mongi, Joseph Lee, his IG name. Joseph Lee won again. He is the champion of the previous year, but you know, you just want that to mean something, where you have a high caliber of athletes there, and that there's, you know, some value to that when someone says, I won this show, like the New York Pro, you know, or like some of these top pros. So that's what my goal is to get, you know, the tier, the level of my show, which is like, you know, the way it's weighted, like the Olympia points that they qualify for. Some of those shows are higher, like the Prague show, I think it's Toronto Pro, the Pittsburgh Pro, the New York Pro. Some of those shows are higher weighted in points. Like, so it means more, you know, if you're the champion of one of those more competitive shows versus, you know, maybe a newer show or a smaller show. So yeah, I just want to keep increasing the caliber of that show and really try and set the standard. So that's what I've tried to do with the Salt City Showdown.
I definitely, like, to me, the Salt City Showdown, like, when I hear that, that's recognizable to me. Like, personally, I don't know if that's
really?
Yes, honestly, and I don't know.
That's so exciting.
I think you should know that. Like, it obviously means a lot to you, as it should, but like, I don't know if it's because of the athletes I follow, but yes, Salt City Showdown is a show I've looked at and have wanted to do, because my family would go to Utah like every year in the summer as well. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that would be awesome to go back there and actually compete and go with my whole family. And but I didn't even know, it wasn't like I was looking for shows in Utah and then I saw that. It was like, a bunch of athletes were talking about it. So
really? Oh, that's so cool.
I think you should know that. And when you're judging, like, is there something that happens, like when there's a tie, like how does the head judge is it the head judge making that decision? Like, who determines that?
I mean, it's hard to have a tie. I mean, I suppose it could happen, but usually there's an odd number of judges, or there's like an alternate. So it's kind of more rare that happens, because usually like the scores go by the number of judges. So if we have 7 judges, like the person who gets first place would end up with 7 points. And the person that gets second place, if we were unanimous, would get 14. So it's pretty clear, like if everyone gave them a 2, does that make sense? Like
Yes.
7 judges, and they all give a person second place. So if you look at score sheets, like they always post the pro ones, you know, like the Columbia show that it was just Shrew Classic Columbia that was just the other day. You know, if you go look at the score sheet, you can see like the winner, Ili Fernandez, you know, they all gave her 1. And so, you know, you can see that with the scores. Yeah. So they kind of always have an alternate. We always have a substitute, like in case there's a conflict. Like if someone on the panel, like their wife competed. I mean, that's happened before because typically you get, right, athletes that are in this field, or like I've had someone, like I've been a judge where I've had like, they don't let you anymore. Like I just don't ever judge if I have an athlete in the show, but they used to say it was okay if I made them aware ahead of time. Like I used to just have to notify them. And again, I've never tried to have like a team. So usually it's only just 1 or 2 athletes that might be in the show that I've worked with. And I just have to let them know. And then I sit out for those classes. So substitute, we try and make it very obvious too. Like I would get up and I actually even left the room because I just wanted to be abundantly clear, that I have nothing to do with that class in case someone feels that there's, some kind of inequality or anything, just be above question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that shows a lot of respect for the sport and the athletes and competitors, like creating a even playing field. I think that's really awesome to hear.
Well, it's fair, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
fair.
like I said, I compete. So whether it's, my organization of the show, Salt City Showdown, where I really try and think like an athlete, and provide the organization and provide things that the athletes would want. But at the same time, as a judge, I mean, I've been in that situation where you're like, oh, like so-and-so's best friend is on the panel. Like, duh, of course they're going to, like, I've totally thought that way before, like in past. And then once I realized how this works, like I said, all the scores are transparent. So if that person gave, you first place and the rest of the panel gave that person 7th place, that one score is going to be thrown out. Like not everybody knows that. The high score and the low score is thrown out. So, if one judge gives someone a placing way higher than the rest of the panel does, it's gone. If the rest of the panel pretty much thinks that person's, 3rd place, and then you get some random judge that gives that person 8th, that score is going to get thrown out. So you can't influence the whole panel that way. You know what I mean? Even if you did have a connection with someone, but yeah, just being above question where, like I said, I would just like get up and leave the room and we have a substitute and they announce that. Like the head judge says, we're going to now have, Michelle Mayberry sit in for Robyn Maher. And then I like leave the room or sit in the audience or whatever. Yeah. So you just try and be really, as fair as possible and just make it very clear that there's going to be no room for anything like that, going on. So.
Yeah, that's good. I think there's people who are listening who maybe are first-time competitors or have been competing for a while and have maybe had speculation or, it's so interesting how people who don't compete want to say like everything's political, which always is so funny to me because I'm like, you've never stepped on stage, but you're
really convenient to say that. Yeah.
Like, okay, you just.
Oh yeah, I had a client of mine telling me that one time. It was so funny. She's stating it like it's facts. She's just like, oh yeah, it's all rigged. Oh, the judges are paid off by the sponsors. And I'm looking at her like, I said, have you ever even been to a bodybuilding show? She's like, no, but I have friends that compete. And I'm like, I knew this person one time that could be, and I was like, wow, okay. Yeah, just stating it like very stacked. But, like that's exactly why I try and like organize, workshops every now and then. I try to do it at least once, sometimes twice a year, where it's totally just educational in nature. I like invite anyone and everyone to come, whether it be coaches or trainers, because listen, some of these, sadly, sometimes these kind of beliefs are perpetuated by coaches and trainers, which is so sad. But like, either they don't really know how like the scoring works, like they don't understand that, the scores are transparent or that highs and lows are thrown out or whatever. Or, they just want to believe that because say their athletes don't place at the top. But it's kind of like, okay, at some point you got to take a look at your athletes and say like, are they ready to be up there? Are they actually competitive? Because I always say like be so good they can't ignore you. I love that quote.
Yes.
Be so good they can't ignore you, because if you bring an undefeatable, physique up there, like you're going to win. It will be just undeniable. And I watched that happen. I always share the story. It was, I don't know why I keep bringing up the Legends Classic, but it was a Legends Pro show like 2 years ago. I believe it was 2017. And I was down there just working with Quest. So I was just at the event, but Margaret Nahr, bikini pro, who at the time was like unaffiliated with any team or coach, she was just independent, won. She won the pro show. And man, she just looked phenomenal. Like in my opinion, her posing was spot on. Her physique looked beautiful. She brought her best that day. And, there's a lot of teams. I won't go into naming things. I don't want it to come across the wrong way, but there's a lot of teams in that area that people are constantly saying you have to be on this team or that team to win. And she just came in and she did just that. She was so good that it couldn't be ignored, And so I just like to share that story to say, listen, it's just not true. You know, and we don't always notice, you know, the people on those teams or affiliated with those coaches who don't win. You don't notice the losers. You don't notice the 10 other athletes they have who like don't place in what class, right? Just because they have 2 or 3 that win. I don't know. So anyway, at some point you just got to be able to take an honest look, right? Whether you're an athlete or a coach or trainer, and say, was this my best, or was this person's physique, you know, beyond defeat, above and beyond. Yeah. So when I was at the, I was able to participate in the Sean's Couture Cooties event I guess like a month ago out in Washington, D.C. We had a whole panel there, you know, Brina Martinez, Stacey McLeod, the coach Ryan Hinton, Kim Odo was there. And it was so nice because we got to bring up a lot of these topics. And there's probably close to 100 girls who, you know, figure in bikini athletes who participate in that. And just so I love just, you know, educating people on some of the questions that we had and like the misconceptions and the myths, you know, that are out there that, you know, it just kind of makes it harder on athletes, I think, when you think you're working against all these, I don't know. And then so just to clear things up, you know, and just say, no, this is the way it goes. And another thing we talked about was like not comparing. Like there was a lot of great questions from the audience, not comparing with other athletes. Like we're all so different. Our preps are different. You know, how many carbs that person's eating versus this one, how many minutes of cardio. Like you just got to put your head down and do your own thing, you know, because at the end of the day, like it doesn't really matter what she's doing or how many carbs she's eating. Like that's not your body. That has nothing to do with you. You know I think people speculate and like they watch too much, you know, what everyone else is doing or compare and listen, social media is not, as you know, I always love to tell people, listen, like social media is real reality TV. Guess what? It's not. Like we all know reality TV, like it's a joke, right? Like behind the scenes at Big Brother or like The Bachelor, we know that the director and the producers back there saying like, okay, you two like reenact that fight or do that, like just saying like it's not, you don't see the whole picture, you know what I mean? So take it only for, like I love to find motivation, like you talked about some people that you follow, like I find the people I follow super motivating. Like when I see, you know, someone who's competing in like say the Japan show coming up like this next week, and I see them like getting all their stuff done and prepping their food and using no excuses, you know, and just like that's motivating to me. That inspires me. That helps me feel like, okay, I can do this. Like that person's working full time. They've got kids. They're doing this and that and the other, and yet they're still getting it done. So I can do it, you know? So that's what I like to take out of social media, just the positive. Agree. Yeah.
There's a lot of awesome people on there, you know, we just have to find them and also be okay with recognizing where the BS lives and turning it off, you know, choosing the higher road. And I think the best way we can change like the majority of social media is by doing the things that others aren't doing, aren't saying, and being completely transparent, because that will inspire more transparency. And also, like what you were saying before too, is you get really motivated by the people who are also moms and also killing it. And I know that for you, you're a really busy woman. You are not only a competitor in the pro league, but you're also a mom and a promoter, and you do work for your clients. So what exactly are you doing like every day, or like how do your weeks actually look? How are you managing?
Oh my gosh. It's pretty crazy. I mean, it's super busy, and I could probably have some like super uber organized color coded system, but I don't. I think I should go figure something out. But for me, like I always just say to people, like it's those little bite-sized pieces. Like for me, it's just like some days I have to get up and like I have a treadmill at home, which is just like a blessing. Like I highly recommend that if you're able to get any kind of used piece of equipment or anything like that. But so I'll, you know, hop on that. Like I'll wake up my kids, and luckily they're big enough to get themselves ready. But you know, I can get like a half an hour or 45 minutes or whatever I'm doing at the time. You know, on my treadmill throughout the day, because like I mentioned, I love to start my day with some activity, with some walking. I'm actually not a super duper morning person. I'm not that chipper, like, hey, good morning. Like I don't train people early in the morning because of that. So I just, for me, like I'm pretty quiet. I don't talk a lot first in the morning, but I like to just get moving and get the blood flowing. So, you know, so it's just like, but then other days I like this morning, I didn't have a lot of, and I do have to like kind of schedule days on purpose like that, but I was able to go to the gym and get my cardio in, like get my workout done first, before other things, but it doesn't always happen that way. So what I do is I just say to people, like, you just got to find little nuggets of time here and there. There are days where my workout split into like 3. And some people think that's crazy or that doesn't make any sense. Like, really, it makes me happy. Like, I like it because I like working out. But what I mean by that is that maybe, 20 minutes of cardio, that maybe then a 30-minute lift, later in the day after I meet with clients or after I take some kid, to their lesson, one of my children, not some random stranger's kid, but maybe it sound that way. But you know what I mean? Like in the summer, I'll do like hill repeats. My daughter goes to a singing lesson. This voice teacher has a studio in her home. And so I take her like in that neighborhood, there's these crazy hills on the bench, kind of in the bottom of the mountains here. And I'm just like, okay, that's called cardio. Like it would kill me to sit in my car for a half hour and do nothing. I would die. So I just, say, okay, I'm going to get out. I'm going to jog up and down this hill and I get a workout done. And I really think that's a good example to our kids. Like, I think our kids need to see us, living this lifestyle too. And they need to see that, like, it's not convenient. Exercise isn't just always like easy. Like, sometimes you got to fit it in, and make it work, but it's that important that, it's worth it. So happen. With my kids, so I try to do more of the whole, like show your example through your actions. And I don't know if you ever heard this quote, and if words are necessary, like use words if necessary. Have you ever heard that?
No, I haven't heard it like that.
I love that. So I think, especially as they get older in their teens, the more and more we like preach at them or say, you need to eat good food, and like, I swear less, they're going to listen, right? Like,
oh yeah.
They're kind of like, yeah. So I think, kids just they see what you're doing, and that's going to speak volumes to them. I mean, I've told them it's important to take care of your body. I tell them, these habits are important or whatever, but I just, and I always invite them along, but I don't pressure them either. So I'll say like, hey, you want to do this? No, I'm good. My sister, she's always like, I'm good. But, every now and then they'll shock me and they'll be like, yeah. And I have to like mask my surprise, but I'm like, okay, cool. Right, cool. Like, I'm leaving 5 minutes. Yeah. Like act normal.
It's fine.
Because I'm not going to pretend that like my kids are like some like exercise gurus or that they're normal kids. And honestly, I had parents that were pretty gung-ho when I was little growing up. Like, they were super, like, you couldn't have anything with sugar in it. We lived in Southern California when I was in elementary school. And power to them. Like, they were trying to just be healthy and do what they thought was best. But it was a little bit extreme, in my opinion. And, like, some of my siblings, and I've talked about it now, where, a few of my siblings said it really made them go the other way. Like, they would go over to friends' houses and just want to binge on Lucky Charms. And so I really, really try to just have a happy medium. Like, I just try to encourage them. I try to be an example. I try not to shove it down their throats. I don't cut out all sugar at my house. I don't say you absolutely can't ever have this and you can only have that. Like, I just try and do a little bit of everything. And if, like, say one of them having a day where I just see like they're going from crackers to chips, or they're little called carb junkies like everyone else, right? But I'll just say like, hey, like, if you're still hungry, let's make you some of this, or like, have you had any fruit yet today? Or let me get you like an apple and peanut butter or whatever. And so I just try to like suggest things, you know what I mean? I never say like, stop eating that, or no, none of this, because I just worry it's going to be, too much. And I never want to go to the other extreme. So it's really tricky as a parent. I mean, every parent has to deal with children in a different way, right? Each child's different, but as a whole, I just think, being a good example to them, and like also providing them with good options. Like, you can't have a home full of I don't like to say junk food or bad choices, whatever. Let's just say less ideal choices. I don't ever label foods like good or bad. That's bad. Right. You don't eat this. Or I would just say, there's some that are better than others, right? Mm-hmm. But we can't really throw that in our kids' faces and then be like, don't eat this, or why are you only eating that, right? It's not really fair. So I just always say, like, at least have a good mix, of all those choices. Because again, I don't think it's necessarily the best thing to cut it all out of your house. That's up to you if you choose to do that in your house. But I like to have a little mixture of both. And then I just say to my kids, like, listen, like, these are treats, and treat, the word implies that it's infrequent, right? That it's not often. It's not a food group. My kids, you'll hear me say that a lot. Like, I'll say to my kids, it's not a food group. So, like, I don't believe ice cream is something we should necessarily be eating every single day. To me, that's like, you're making it like a food group, like a foundation of your intake, your diet, right? So I'll just say, like, listen, that's fine. We can have ice cream Sundays once a week, or whatever we decide is appropriate. But I just try and talk to them more about like the majority of what we put in our bodies, you know, on a daily
I love
basis
that. I think that's
should be
really
some,
good.
I hope so.
Yeah,
You
I
never
think it
know.
can create like a healthy relationship with food. And I kind of want to, I know I've taken up a good amount of your time, but I do want to get into asking you about advice for some new competitors and also competitors who are on their road to pro. So real quickly, could you just give us like advice for each of those types of competitors?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, the new competitor is kind of that like little analogy I said going to Mexico. Like everyone has a different experience, and you know, just making it your own and taking like the positive out of it. Because I really, really believe in like mindset. Like when I spoke at that event in DC about a month ago, really that was the gist of what I was sharing with the girls, because they kind of like they wanted me to talk about how do you balance, you know, competing and family and everything else. And I just think at the end of the day, because our lives, like we all have challenges in our lives. Like I said, you know, on social media, we don't see everything. Like people don't see everything going on in my life. Like I'm literally legally restrained from referring to certain things on my social media, which I can't tell you what it is, but there's things that I would like to share, you know, that would give people a bigger picture about what I'm going through, you know, sometimes on a daily basis, and sometimes some challenges that like, you know, are in my life that make things really, really hard that I can't. I wish I could be more real and share some of that, but you know, so the point just being that we all have, you know, different challenges, whether they're inner demons or they're quite literal demons, you know, that we're fighting against in our lives. Sometimes people sadly like to make our lives difficult. And so, you know, we just can get whatever we want out of it. I just think the mind is so, so powerful. And so when you know, believe in yourself, when you're determined to reach a goal, and when you have that healthy point of view, where you just say, you know what, it's like a marathon. Like anyone who runs a marathon, when you run 26 miles, you're incredible. You're amazing, right? It doesn't really matter, in my opinion, what your time is. I don't care if you ran your marathon in 3 hours and qualified for the Boston Marathon, or if you ran it in 7. You just ran 26 miles. You're a champion. So I kind of think of competing that way. Like just going through the process and getting to the finish line and getting up there and doing that is so amazing. So I just think, you know, like bring your best, like I said, but yet keep it in perspective. Like you're on your personal journey. It's you against you, as cliche and overused as that is. It's just true. You know what I mean? When you're focused on your progress and what you can control and like constantly improving yourself, I just think you're always going to have a good experience. You won't come away from it like this sad girl that I mentioned, you know, that didn't act like a professional the other day, you know, and I get it. When we work hard, we want to be rewarded for that. But there's just a point where we have to keep it in perspective, you know? So for newbies, I just kind of like highly recommend just, you know, focusing on like the accomplishment and doing your best. And then you're going to the takeaway is going to be huge, you know, emotionally and like the strength and empowerment that you feel, to me, is just like immeasurable.
That's awesome.
And then going from that to a pro, oh my gosh, how humbling is that? Like you push for this amazing goal for so long, right? That seems almost unattainable, and then it's kind of like, oh my gosh, wow, like it actually happened, and then you're at the bottom again. Like it's so humbling, because you're just like, whoa, I'm actually on stage with like Olympians or like people that I've looked up to for years, you know, who have inspired me or motivated me, and it's so humbling, and in a good way, because again, you just start on this journey and you progress and you bring your very, very best, but to me, without diminishing, you know, myself or having, I mean, not to like be overly pious or humble, but like I just am like, wow, I just got on stage with Olympians. Like I'm going to be proud of myself no matter what I place, you know, not that I go into it expecting not to place, you know what I mean, or not bringing my best. You don't want to go into it that way. Like, oh, these people are way better than me, so I can't. You don't have that attitude, but at the same time, it's an amazing accomplishment just to get up there, you know, just to be. And I truly, as cheesy as it may sound when I post about it, I really do feel it's an honor, and I'm proud of it, and I'm proud to be part of the Pro League, and it is something that I feel like is really important, and you show respect for it. If you don't have respect for it, you don't have respect for the judges, don't compete. You know what I mean? Don't step on stage, because I feel like there's some who kind of need to take a second look at themselves sometimes and just go, okay. Yeah. So, you know, when you step on stage, you know, I just think like you're taking all that into account. We know we're going to be judged, and there's just a due respect, you know, for the industry, for the sport, for the judges who put a lot of time into it. Like a lot of people don't realize, like judges, it's basically like volunteer work practically, you know what I mean? For the time that they travel to those shows, like if they're coming, especially if they're coming from out of state, but just being there all day long, like it's a long day for judges. And I just really believe like you got to love the sport to want to do that, because it's definitely not for the financial compensation, which is fine. Like I'm not trying to emphasize that fact, but just like, please remember like that they love the sport and they want to be there too. So, for us as competitors, whether it's NPC or IFBB, like having a respect for those individuals that are there, and then also the other athletes on stage. You know what I mean? Like if we come away saying that was unfair, my placing wasn't good, whatever, you're kind of taking away what all those other athletes have put in as well, So I just believe like we got to just go in with that you versus you attitude, and just taking our best out of each and every experience, and then it's going to be positive. It's always going to be a great experience when you do that. And for some it's not, and that's okay. But sort of one of those things, like I started to mention, then just don't compete. It's okay. You know what I mean? No one's forcing you to be there.
Yeah.
I mean, to try and put it in a nice way. Like, no one's forcing you to be there. So if it's not bringing you happy, it's just like the social media thing we talked about, right? If you're following someone, or there's a particular account for you, it triggers something, it makes you feel feelings of inadequacy or whatever, that's fine. I mean, A, I believe you got to take responsibility for that for you, because that person doesn't make you feel anything. But B, if it's not positive, just unfollow. No big deal. Like, I'm never offended. I don't track who follows me or who unfollows me. My very best friend could not be following me right now, and I would have no idea. And I would not even like go question her about it. Because like it's their choice. It's social media. It's not a big deal. Like, don't take it too seriously. But yeah, as far as the sport, I mean, just loving it and having that respect for it. But there was one thing we didn't talk about though that I wanted to hit on, which is like the hormone stuff and all the just because, like, for me, it was between 2013 2014 when I was sort of doing an off-season, trying to figure out if I wanted to do figure or bikini. But I was having, like, extreme fatigue. And it's not like I'd been a competitor for long. I mean, I trained way harder as a marathon runner, doing, 20-mile runs on the weekend and running for hours on end and all of that. And not eating enough, by the way, too. Like, I just was still in a little bit more of an old school mindset at that point in time. With nutrition, I wasn't really feeding myself enough, but I started feeling like this really bad, like, lethargy, and just wasn't feeling like things were right. And at the time, I'm eating like oats and egg whites and whatever, like, on paper, like a perfect little diet. And so, long story short, I ended up having my hormones tested, and I had low thyroid, low testosterone, low progesterone.
Wow.
Which, I was like 38 or something by that point. So that's not like all that uncommon at that age, for your hormones to be a little bit like this. Like, some people need to supplement some things, but I didn't know about the thyroid thing at all. And it turns out that totally runs in my family, like on my mom's side. My younger sister has Hashimoto's. So they actually tested me for Hashimoto's at one point because it was pretty extreme and my symptoms were pretty bad. And thankfully I tested, negative for that. But, I started using just like the tiniest, so I think it was like half a grain, I don't remember what they call it, like micrograms, but it made all the difference in the world. And got, my thyroid working a little bit better. And that's also with the supplementation that we referred to earlier, like I take selenium and other things that are, meant to help your thyroid function properly. So for some of us, based on our different health situations, it's smart to take, those with anxiety, like I take 5-HTP and GABA before I go to bed, or, there's certain things that we can take that are available to us that can help our particular, situation, or might benefit us. Does that make sense? So
absolutely.
So yeah, for me, like the hormone thing was crazy. I mean, my progesterone was like non-existent, which, not to share too much information, but mostly women that listen. So I was basically having a period like nonstop. Like, all these women talk about losing their cycle when they're competing. I've gotten as low as like 10% or below, and I've never lost a cycle ever. Like, I started my period the day I won my pro card, that morning.
Wow.
Which, by the way, you will never see posted anywhere, because I just don't really, I never ever want to have excuses for anything. And I mean, clearly things went my way that day. But I've had other situations where it didn't, and I just never, it is what it is. Like, we're women and we kind of have to deal with that. But yeah, so because my progesterone was super, super low, I was having this like nonstop period, which made me anemic. So I just felt like I wanted to die. And my testosterone was 10, which even for a woman is very, very low. So I was having trouble, like, just even waking up in the morning and getting out of bed. And I thought I was like depressed or something, because I'm like, man, I usually just, I get out of bed and I go work out and I do my thing, and like, I am dragging here. So I was kind of putting it all on myself, like, what's wrong with me and all this. And, you know, when those hormones are out of whack, like we are not functioning at 100%. It's really hard, and it affects all your relationships, you know, and everything that you're doing. Like it can affect your mood. You know, we can have mood swings, feel irritable. It can cause us to have cravings. So I just highly recommend. I mean, I really think anyone over 30, but I've even had some clients under 30 that have had, you know, symptoms of like irregular cycles and just atypical type of stuff where I've said, you definitely need to go have your hormones checked. Like something's not right. Something's just not, you know, meshing with, you know, that balance between all those hormones. And it doesn't make a night and day difference once you do. So, like I saw one of my fellow teammates posted recently about getting her blood tested, and then apparently she must have gotten like an influx of DMs, like questioning what she was taking and why she's testing her blood. And she was just like, you guys, I know, right?
This is
like,
health.
You guys, calm down. It's like, it's your health, it's your body. Like, it's just smart to know where your body's at, and know if you have any, like you could have a vitamin D deficiency, or you could have, you know, like me with the low iron. And I mean, clearly I eat enough protein, but, you know, I do supplement iron. Again, that's something that like my body needs and not everybody needs. So I'll supplement iron and take it with vitamin C to hopefully absorb it better. But then I also may include like some lean steak or like a burger every now and then, which I don't necessarily love, you know, red meat, but I do that just for the nutritional purposes. So it just tells you like what's going on with your body, you know, so we can just be functioning at 100% and know where we're at. It's just smart. So once I was able to do that, like I just do a bioidentical, you know, compounded, like 100 milligrams of progesterone a night, and it just like gets me good. But I started to say though, that led me to, I ended up discovering that I had not only fibroids in my uterus, but I had a mass in my uterus, because we were looking into all these symptoms. They got to the point where they put me on like as much progesterone as they could give me, like daily, and they were like, we can't prescribe you anymore. Like this is not normal. Like my body was just not even relenting. And so they ended up having me do an ultrasound. Yeah, and then I found out I had this mass that was like the size of a golf ball. So thank goodness we biopsied it, and it wasn't, you know, cancerous. But my doctor, like because of that and the fibroids, which just if anybody deals with that, I mean, it's almost like you know, endometriosis of the uterus. Like it's just like scar tissue, and it just makes things really bad, throws everything off. So she was just like, you're done having kids. Like, let's just do a hysterectomy. So yeah, so I ended up having that 2 years ago now. It was March of 2017. So that was challenging. Like coming back from that is no joke.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. How did that
Yeah,
impact
a
your
lot of people
training?
told me, oh my gosh, well, I had to take a full month off, which to me is like a death sentence, because like I told you, I mean, it's for me, it's a lot of mental health, you know, and it's like it's therapeutic for me to work out and just go to the gym every day. So that was really, really hard to kind of just take away my you know, my gym time. That so dealing with that and then just feeling off, you know, you just had to like let go of it. Anyone who has to go through that, or say you're working with thyroid and you're figuring out what your thyroid, that you have to play with dosages. Sometimes you have to, you know, you're taking nature thyroid or armor thyroid or some T3. Sometimes you have to figure out where your body's not quite connecting, you know, or putting things together. And if you have a good doctor, then they won't wait like 6 months. Some doctors will try and say that, and you don't have to do that. You can find a different practitioner, because it doesn't take that long to know if something's going to work or not. Yeah,
especially
in my
for
experience.
women,
So
you can know within like 3 to 4 months based on your cycle alone.
Oh yeah, I mean, for me, like when they first put me on it back in 2013, like I could feel it within weeks. So that year when I was prepping, because it was in the fall time, and I ended up doing that Legend, my first bikini show. That was like February 1st of 2014. And I remember I was shocked that like I was feeling that good, and then I was on stage and in shape by then, because based on how I was feeling just that previous fall, I just didn't think I was anywhere near, you know, getting on stage, or nothing was going to work. So it really, like, in my opinion, when you get somebody good, or you get the right dosages, like it can really click and pull together pretty fast. And then it's amazing, because everything's like synergistic. It's like things just work, and you feel like your efforts in the gym and, you know, your dieting or whatever you're doing as far as your nutrition, like works, instead of fighting this uphill battle, which can be so exhausting and like mentally and emotionally draining and frustrating. You know what I mean? Where
Yes.
you're just like, I'm doing everything. And then you just want to give up. Like, you just want to say, like, oh, I'm just going to go eat pizza and ice cream because
oh my God,
nothing's working. Like, I've totally been there before. And I've given in, on some of those days back at that time. Because I was just like, oh my gosh, screw it. Like, I feel like my body fat's going to be the same either way. My body's not. I was gaining weight at the time. Like, I was dieting and I was gaining weight, like, inexplicably. So it was really challenging. Yeah. So definitely recommend, like, it's worth, sometimes people don't want to pay the money, or their plan, doesn't cover anything. And I'm a single mom. I didn't have any health coverage at the time. And I put it out of my pocket. Like, I remember my blood test was like $1,000 at the time.
Dang.
Oh, it was bad. Cause I did, full panels of everything, cortisol, DHEA, all your endocrine stuff. And so, but it was worth it. And then paying those prescriptions of, whatever you do need. So,
yeah,
you kind of have to just figure out what works. But yeah, I mean, like, it's hard to put a price on your health and your mind,
always
your
have
well-being.
a budget for it. Always.
Yeah. I mean, some kind of budget, or like for me at that time, it was a little bit of give and take. Like, I'm on a pretty fixed budget. As a single mom, like, I don't get like some big alimony check every month. I get basically the bare minimum child support. I'll be grateful for that. But it's, 3 teenagers are really expensive. I have kids driving now and everything. But again, just to go back to that, yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, okay, we don't go out to eat as much, or we don't spend money on, I don't get a big family vacation, but man, every single day I'm going to feel like 100%, and I'm going to be able to be a good mom or a good friend to people, and be able to work and meet with clients, and do what I need to do. So sometimes you do have to, pick and choose what we're spending our money on.
And it's definitely tough sometimes, like when you're going through those times where you're like, you don't even know what your body's going through, and you're almost like fighting against your own body. That is tough. And especially when you have other goals, or you had other plans, or you had this like whole entire, and I'm saying this as though it's like an everyone thing, but it's because like I've been there before, so I know how that feels.
Yeah.
It's like that really
totally.
It's not fun. But before, I feel like we could literally talk all day, and there's so much.
I know, I'm sorry. You're too good.
I love talking to you, and like as you know, I had so many questions prepped for you, but I would love for you to just let everyone know where they can get in touch with you, how they could potentially work with you or learn more about the shows that obviously the Salt City Showdown. So do you mind just filling everybody in on that, and then we'll go from there?
Oh, for sure. Well, my email's really easy. It's just like my Instagram account, which is slcgirlrunning@gmail.com. So always welcome, for questions, or people who need support, or if they want to do, custom meal plans. I absolutely do custom meal plans. They're not cookie cutter. They're not templates. They're not just downloads. And I just really, really enjoy doing things that are going to work with people. So like I said, I work with more lifestyle than NPC, or competition clients, just because I really like to help people find balance and just get to a point where they can see for life that's sustainable. But yeah, so I'm available there. I have a website, www.fitrobyn.com. Just barely got the domain for robynmaher.com. So I'll be working on that and getting that all active. And then my showdown, the Salt City Showdown, which is April 13th this year. We have NPC, all divisions. We have IFBB Pro, Bikini, and Men's Physique. And that website is www.saltcityshowdown.com. And you can contact me through that as well, or you're welcome to, direct message me with questions about that. But it's an incredible show, and it's all about the experience. It's by the athletes, for the athletes. So I truly try to make that show just an absolutely unforgettable experience. So year after year, I have athletes tell me, I'm coming back next year. I'm coming back next year. Like literally, Joe Griffey has been there every single year. He placed second the first year in 2016, and then he's been our champion for the past 2 years. And he's just like, every year, I'm coming back. So
that's awesome.
So yeah, lots of fun stuff.
Awesome. Well, I have appreciated everything that you've shared and opened up about and taught us, and I want everybody to be able to do that too. So everybody listening, follow her on Instagram, go to those websites, just get in touch with her and let her know how much you appreciated this episode and everything she did share with us. Of course, all of that information is going to be on the show notes on www.celestial.fit/podcast. Of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, definitely should do that. But just thank you guys so much again for listening and tuning in. Robyn, thank you so much for your time. And to
Thank
everybody
you.
listening, you're so welcome. I just appreciate you and the time you've spent with me. I know is like way more than expected, but it means a lot, and I'm sure it'll mean a lot to everybody. So everybody listening, hope you have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.